This is a very disturbing story. There's a video involved here. It involves this guy. His name, it says Archimandrite. I don't know what title that means. He's basically a priest. His name is Alexis Rosentool. And this guy was a priest working in the Australian and New Zealand diocese of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. That is the actual name of the denomination, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. And in 2022, that dude was arrested and charged with very disturbing things. He was charged with sexually assaulting two men in the 1980s and then doing the same to a child 2 decades later in the aughts. So that's very disturbing. Now, the thing about Australia and New Zealand is if you are charged with a crime, and don't ask me about the specifics here. I apologize if I get it wrong. A lot of times when someone is charged with a crime and it's a high profile situation, they basically say you're not allowed to name the suspect in news stories because you don't want to taint the jury pool. So after this guy was arrested, no one can really talk about what happened because he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. But it turns out there was a right-wing Russian propagandist who started talking about this because he heard it was this guy who got arrested. And despite being like a Putin propagandist, he didn't like this guy at all. And he didn't like what this guy was charged with. So he started talking to his live stream audience, which is huge, and telling them it was this guy and this is what he got charged with. And at that point, he actually got in trouble for that. The authorities knew this guy is so popular that by him talking about it and presuming this guy is guilty, you're not giving this guy a fair trial. So they actually punished him for it. The YouTuber was sentenced to 10 months in jail, this Russian propagandist dude. And then after he was paroled months later, he actually feared he was going to end up in jail for other crimes. So ever since then, he's been hiding in the Russian consulate in Australia. Tangential story, but just going to put that out there. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, the criminal trial for this priest finally ended, and he was found guilty of those heinous crimes I mentioned earlier. So now he's guilty. He's been convicted of these crimes. Now the public can talk about it. And that meant the gag order was lifted. And at the time, the leader of the Australian and New Zealand Diocese of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, he issued a statement as soon as that conviction came through. You could see the date on it up there, June 27th. And he basically says, "Dear clergy, we write to you with heavy heart to make a public statement to acknowledge and unreservedly apologize for crimes of sexual abuse committed by Rosentool, a priest who served in our community for many years." And I just want to point this out. Look at this bit. The leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia seeks to state for the record, to the survivors and their families, we offer our deepest, most sincere apology. No words can adequately express our sorrow for the harm caused, nor can they undo the impact done. We specifically apologize for the abuse and profound trauma caused, any action or inaction to respond appropriately and mitigate the abuse or trauma caused, and the breach of trust and faith this represents to you and the entire community. Which, and by the way, he also announced how the church would take steps to make sure this sort of thing never happened again. I got to say, as far as responses to these kinds of convictions go, that one is not bad. But then, like about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the archpriest of the church where Rosentool worked delivered the first sermon after this dude's conviction. The archpriest's name is Boris Ignatievsky, and he delivered a sermon, and he basically pointed out there are a lot of people who still support Rosentool, and they think this is an unfair attack on their former priest. But other people are very shocked by the verdict, and they're mad at a man they once trusted. And I want you to hear what this guy said to his congregation. I will tell you, I'm going to play you a video in just a second. I have sped it up about 2 times as fast because this guy talks really slowly. and he speaks in Russian, so you're just going to have to read the subtitles.
Напоминает мне о том, что сейчас мы все стоим перед большим искушением грешить осужденным наших ближних и даже священнослужителей. На этой неделе вышел документ из нашей епархии, в котором владыка Георгий оповестил Пасху о совершении суда над архимандритом Алексеем Розентулом. Многие из вас этот документ уже прочитали, я не буду вдаваться в детали. К сожалению, это печальное событие уже разделило нашу епархию на тех, кто за и кто против. И это само по себе отрицательное развитие. Но самое плохое – это то, что и та, и другая сторона впали в искушение грешить осуждением. Будьте осторожны. Словами нашей церкви, осуждение является видом гордости и поэтому является одним тягчайших грехов. Судить священников – не ваше дело. Овцы пастыря не судят, каков бы он ни был. Судить священников значит судить самого Христа. Изо всех сил всего берегитесь. Ухо своего не поставляй, чтобы услышать плохое о других. Но будь снисходительным, жалей людей, и жив будешь. Братья и сестры, послушаем же голос от церкви. Мы ее члены, и наше темное осуждение, осуждающее око будет темным пятном на нашей святой церкви. Да не будем участники такого зла. To judge clergy is not for us. Sheep do not judge their shepherd, irrespective of who he is. To judge clergy means to judge Christ himself. So be very, very careful. Brothers and sisters, let us listen to the voice of the church as we are its members, so that our dark, judgmental eye does not leave a dark stain on our one true, holy church. God forbid that we should participate in such sinful acts. Amen.
So, I know that was a little fast, but basically, in both Russian and English, what this guy said was the sheep do not judge the shepherd. To judge a priest means to judge Jesus Christ himself. And so he's basically saying, yeah, this guy got convicted for the worst possible crimes, but you can't be mad at him about that. Don't you dare condemn him. That's like condemning Jesus. Here's an alternative thought. Yeah, everyone can condemn this guy. Rosenthal wasn't just accused of this stuff, he was convicted of it. So the church didn't prevent that stuff from happening over the course of decades. I don't think they deserve forgiveness now. And Rosenthal definitely doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt at this point. Like the idea that a religious leader or any leader ought to be immune from condemnation is ridiculous. And to make that argument under the cloak of religion is even worse. Like protecting predators because they are priests, that's what the Catholic Church has gotten in trouble for. And the Mormon Church and Jehovah's Witnesses. Like that's what they were doing for decades, and that's why people have problems with them. One of many reasons. To hear someone make that exact argument today, that is appalling. And later on, when he was asked about like, what the hell did you just say? When the Sydney Morning Herald asked that guy about that, he said, I'm not talking about Rosenthal. I'm talking about other clergy members who got wrapped up in this story. Like, no one should condemn those guys. But like, dude, we heard you. You were talking about Rosenthal. So you're lying at this point. And then separately from all that, this is another thing. This isn't pertinent to the story, but I think it's interesting. In Australia, if you set up a church, you still got to register it with the state. And there is a website where you could see like registered charities. And this dude Rosenthal, after he was like, before he was arrested, but after people knew he did a really horrible thing, he set up shop in a different city and launched this ministry, the Holy Transfiguration Monastery of Bambala Incorporated. And you could see like they have to list their annual reporting about financial statements and everything, because that's how you're supposed to do it. But I want to scroll down to this one thing down here. Look at the documents. They also have to file governing documents, or maybe if you're at a nonprofit, you have to file your bylaws with the country. And this one is dated June 25th, 2025, which is like a couple of weeks ago, even though this church was launched, as you could see right above there, in 2013, 2014. Why is the governing document brand new? And the reason is they had a much older governing document on that website, but as soon as this dude got convicted and publicized, that church took down their old governing documents real fast, and they put up brand new ones. And trying to find the old copy of the governing documents, I had to like follow that right-wing Russian propagandist on weird social media and look through comments. I'm pretty sure I am now tagged as some sort of Russian agent or something, but I found it. I found the old document and it is so messed up. Let me show you this. This is the original copy that was taken down from that website. It's dated 2007, whenever they launched something, blah, blah, blah. I want to show you a couple things. One is the signature of the lady who signed off on this, because she has the weirdest, most interesting signature you will ever see. There we go. There it is. Kirsty Cleverly, solicitor. It's just a series of loops. And I know this has nothing to do with anything, but I can't not stare at that signature. I see the K at the beginning, I see the Y at the end, and then just a bunch of loops. Like, that's not a signature. That's just lazy. But the next bit, and she signed her name a million times. Then they have this. This is what they didn't want people to see, because this is no longer in the new bylaws. The rule. If you are a member of Rosenthul's monastery, you have to follow a certain set of rules. And it's called the rule. And it listed all the things you got to follow. Some of them are kind of obvious. Honor God and you shall be saved. But let me scroll down. Like, let me scroll down to this section over here. Look at number 16. Let there be silence in the refectory with the exception of the abbot and those whom he addresses. Like, none of you all are allowed to talk. Look at number 19. When you are abused, be quiet. Offend no one, and when you are offended, bear it patiently. Put no hope in vain plans and dreams, but be firm in Christ. Holy crap. That is disturbing. They also had a big section on women, because this is an all-male monastery, and they really don't like women. And look at the way they treat women in this thing. Here we go. Oil feeds the fire of a lamp. Discourse with a woman fires the lusts. The gaze of a woman is like a poisoned arrow, wounding the soul unto death. This, if an incel wrote this online, you'd be like, yeah, that tracks. This is Rosenthul running his monastery. As from poison, flee conversation with women if you hope to keep yourself pure. In such talk is concealed the ruinous venom of the serpent. It is better to jump into a raging fire than to draw near to a young woman. Especially when you are young, avoid discourse with women if you hope to curb your bodily lusts. Jesus Christ. These guys cannot handle being in the same room with a woman because they just can't help themselves. I don't know. By the way, Mike Pence and Billy Graham believe the exact same thing, that if you're alone with another woman, you need to not do that unless she's your wife. Otherwise, bad things will happen. My point is, this is very cultish behavior that this guy was running. Creepy, scary. And guess what? He was convicted of sexual abuse. Surprise? Like, no wonder they wanted to erase this document from the public eye. Anyway, if you think silence in the face of abuse is the moral path, even if it allows the abuse to continue, your religion is the problem, especially when the abuser is a religious leader. And yet somehow the religious leaders who remain in that church are still spreading those same harmful beliefs among the people who still attend their churches. So that's disturbing. Okay, I will stop there with that story. What other questions we got here? People in position of authority should be held to a higher standard, not to a lower one, and be excused for anything they do. I agree. If you are a elected official, your job is to represent all of your constituents, not just your base. If you are appointed a pastor at a church, you should be more ethical than everybody else. Like, you would think that's the case. And that's what they all say is the case. But obviously, in practice, we know that's like never the case. Thank you for the donation, by the way. This hasn't been on the news here in Australia. Well, then, Australia, you just have to follow me. I will say, I got a lot of my information for this story from some Australian media outlets like the Sydney Morning Herald. So some of them are covering this, even if not everyone is. Honestly, for church apology, that's pretty damn legit. I totally agree, which is why it was so shocking to watch that video of that church leader basically saying, yeah, you can't condemn us at all. This is like how the J-Dubs, Jehovah's Witnesses, argue that if their church is sued for its crimes, then it'll make Jehovah look bad. Yeah, there's a big campaign of silence in the face of abuse that a lot of those Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormon church, they do this a lot. They want you to keep quiet about religious leaders within their fold. It's better to take care of it internally than go public with it. The problem is they don't take care of it internally, and there's plenty of stories about it. How old is this crap you are reading? Um, I assume you're talking about The Rule because it looks like it was written 3,000 years ago, and the answer is no, it's less than 20 years old. Scary. There are people who still believe that, and they're all on like 4chan boards or whatever is the alternative for that these days. Twitter.